Hey, folks, thanks for joining us. Super excited to have a convo with Jamie Dubs on helium in general. Jamie's been around for a long time, certainly longer than I have. So we'll start off, dude, with how'd you get into helium? Kind of what's your background and what are you doing with and for helium now?
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me. I first heard about helium, I think in late 2019-ish. I've been involved in a lot of community wireless projects throughout my career. Back in the day, like with 𝗨𝗏 and then things like 𝗏C Mesh. And so do a lot of things with crypto. And so seeing helium as sort of kind of like a community wireless project that is rewarding people with crypto tokens was sort of a no-brainer. And bought my first hotspot. I feel like, what is it? That first 6 weeks of obsessing over antennas went from someone who knows almost nothing about radio to being, an antennologist in 48 hours. And then I found myself, I got more involved in governance after joining the Decentralized Wireless Alliance, where I'm a board member. And there we do a lot of projects related to community development and governance in the Helium ecosystem. But specifically, I'm most involved in the general sort of helium improvement proposals process, the HIPS process, which I helped draft kind of the initial design for as a way of sort of moving some of the control and influence over the Helium network from just Helium Inc. to more of the community, as well as the monthly community calls that I host and run and manage to screw up every time, even though I've been doing it for like over a year. And then the data work. I do a lot of just general big fan of graphs and charts. And when I got involved in helium, there weren't as many as there could be. And so we helped stand up this dy-ETL instance, which is just like a visualization tool on top of the same kind of database that's used for the Helium API. And over the last year or so, we've really built out a lot of cool dashboards related to it as like a way of just exploring all the raw data inside of the blockchain.
Dig it. And you're like a startup badass as well. Like you didn't just kind of trip and fall and end up in helium. You've built some companies, you've done some rad stuff.
That's very generous, but
here, right?
I've been involved in mostly kind of like Web 2 companies, a lot of internet video projects. Actually, I'm wearing an old startup shirt right now. You can
yeah.
You can buy the startup, but you can't buy the swag back from me. I will wear it forever.
No, you can't. Yeah, it's only free.
And so I was involved in a lot of early internet video stuff with Rocket Boom and Know Your Meme, and then the startup called 𝗵𝗁𝗍 that we started, which was acquired by Vimeo. And that's actually where I got most interested in crypto, because I started looking really heavily into a lot of decentralized storage solutions. And I became a contributor to IPFS, and I've spent a lot of time with systems like IPFS, Filecoin, Arweave. And in general, sort of a lot of my interest in crypto has stemmed from Web 2 stuff, and then how can we transition a lot of this sort of shared infrastructure and this sort of what we call like cloud computing, but really it's like Microsoft computing, Amazon computing, and Google computing. And I've always been a big fan of sort of decentralized systems, distributed systems, peer-to-peer networks in general. And so Helium to me is such like a beautiful kind of like a problem-specific crypto network that's built around this idea of how can we build kind of a people's wireless network? How can we build like a people's telecommunications company?
Yeah. The whole thing is rad. And then it appears to me as a non-technical person is you've got that really nice blend of you actually know what's going on somewhere inside a computer, and you're really excited to share that with people. And so, I think it's very not specific to helium, but I've seen it in helium where people are just generous beyond measure with their knowledge. And I think about when I first got to Discord in September of 2020, I think you could read back to the beginning of every thread and on the Discord at the time. And that's what I did. It's not even close. You can't even do that. You're not even close to doing that now just because there's so much information on there. And while there's plenty of noise on there, you're dealing on Discord with people who have this deep mastery of a bunch of disparate things. And you seem to be one of those people. So it's really cool to to get to talk to you and to dive into some of the stuff you've built. I'd like to jump into the ETL stuff, right? Okay. So imagine that I don't know very much about this at all. I love seeing rad things. Let's start off with what's an ETL, and then how does that relate to what you're doing with it? And if you want to share your screen now, we can do that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll give the high level around the 𝗙ETL specifically is an instance of the blockchain ETL system that was developed by Helium Inc., which basically is a blockchain node for the Helium network that grabs all the data about the blocks, like the transactions and the beacon receipts and payments and all the various things happening inside of the chain, and then shoves it into a Postgres database. And this was created originally to build the API. And so there's the Helium API that everybody fetches lots of data from and causes, has problems. Causes probably giving Mad Ninja an ulcer on the daily.
Poor guy.
Basically, it's just like it's a web API built on top of that same Postgres database. So the idea with the 𝗙ETL, which I'll bring up, it's using an open source app that I found called Metabase. Sorry, I lost my tab.
Yep. So while you find it, hang on a second, because I'm sure that that plenty of folks are they understand what you said, but there's lots of people that didn't. So we've got an ETL, which seems like that's the way to get the information from one thing to another. We've got the API, which I'm not clear of the difference between those two.
Please.
It's embarrassing my ignorance and stunning at times. So try and keep your jaw off the floor. And then there's a Postgres database. So there's like three things that don't make any sense to me, but the takeaway is that there's like some way to look at Helium
basically
data.
The high level of it is really that it's just like a way of putting blockchain data into a form that, your average data analyst can write SQL queries to pull things out and make some charts and graphs and sort of inspect what's going on inside of the network without having to, pull it out of either like the Helium Explorer or pull it like directly out of the API. Like it's in a normal form, so it's a lot easier to work with.
And why would someone not want to pull it out of
the
Helium
Explorer? I mean, really, the Explorer is pulling it out of the API, which is then pulling it out of one of these databases. And so that's kind of just like a very specific path, if that makes sense. Like and what they've built is like, the Explorer really is just sort of like a kind of a dashboard of a specific set of data. And then like I can actually show you with the 𝗙ETL, we've recreated a lot of the reports that you might find inside of the Explorer. And it's not a custom website, so it's more generalized, so it's not as easy to sort of use, but it's all the raw data is there, and so you can manipulate it and build your own custom reports. And sort of like it would be really difficult to customize the Explorer. You would need to have the API, you would need to deploy your own instance of the Explorer, you need to be comfortable with React and Next.js and all these web development things. Whereas with the ETL and being able to just write SQL queries, like it's a much lower technical ask, I think, to just like write queries to figure out what you want, and it's just easier to customize it. And you can always come back to it later. Like I have reports that I check every week or I check every month.
Yeah.
Yeah,
let's dig in. I got access to this thing a while ago, and I don't know if this is public or you have to request access, or you can see some stuff but not others. But
there's a lot. Yeah, it is public, and the idea was always to create like a public good. Like there's, and that is like a lot of the mission of the DY is really trying to make Helium more accessible and bring more people into the fold. And so a big part of that has been sort of this initiative to make Helium ecosystem data more accessible, and in the grant programs and other initiatives that we do. And so with the 𝗙ETL, you do need to sign up. You can log in or sign up with like a Google account. It must be a gmail.com account for anybody trying to do it, which is just a limitation of Metabase, the software that we use.
It can also be a Google Workspace account, right? Because I've got my @𝗪ShKing, which is a Google.
Yeah,
account,
that might have been. I might have set that up for you, and I'm always happy to set up accounts for people using like their own email address. But it's funny because Metabase is an open source piece of software that does all these visualization front ends, like all these great graphs and everything. But it's kind of designed for an internal corporate use case rather than what we're using for, which is sort of like trying to create all these public dashboards. So it literally doesn't even have a mode of like public read only. And I have a bounty that I put up in their forum that if anybody out there is interested, I would love to add this one feature to Metabase. And, as with all things DeWi, we're happy to kind of pay for it.
That's right. I mean, so I probably shouldn't skip over that because I've talked to Joey Hiller recently, who just got hired by DeWi. And that is probably, after you, the single most valuable thing DeWi has ever done. That guy is incredible. And everyone I talk to at DeWi is just saying like, dude, and maybe this isn't the right way to say it, but we have money to throw at projects that are useful. If you have a useful project, don't let money be the thing that is the blockage for it. And it's not something to abuse, but it's just like, hey, if you've got the skills and the time and you can put the blood in there, we will add the treasure 100%. And make something awesome.
Our entire reason for existence is to help build and fund development of the Helium ecosystem. So, you're thinking about quitting your job and working on Helium full time, or you've got grant ideas, or you want to, build some new dashboards or help out with things in, community side, documentation, local meetups. Like really the ideas are limitless around like what you can rationalize to help the network, so to speak. It's either like, you want to write Erlang? Yes, please. You want to make YouTube videos? I think that's great too. So I really appreciate all the to your point earlier about how difficult it is to follow the Discord. Like this kind of education and community building and even just sort of information sharing is also super valuable. So thank you.
Yeah. I'm so pumped for this. This is like, I think of this as, it's like Helium has built an entire ecosystem for me. And I have all of these corporate people working for me for free, doing all of this badass stuff. It's like the coolest thing I've ever been a part of.
Yeah. One thing that's remarkable too is that I'm involved in a number of crypto projects, but Helium has like by far one of the nicest communities and most supportive communities of any of the projects I've been involved in, as well as like a very high proportion of people for whom it is kind of their first crypto project, which I think is really exciting. And yeah, it's like good vibes all around. And then the team is like straight up in Discord. Like Amir must be like the number one support person in the Discord at this point.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I'm like, dude, what are you doing? But
I think it's actually
he's there
2 people
all the time.
I think he has like a twin or something, because it's not
possible
for him to do all of the above.
All right. Well, so take me through here. Like, let's see. I'd like to go through this in kind of 2 steps. One step is just looking like what's out there, and then the next step would be what are you into? What do you look at? What's fascinating? What's interesting to you? So if we can start off with kind of the
I'll
big
give you a
structure,
quick tour. I haven't done this support before, so please forgive me. But the network overview, I think, is a good place to start. This is a bunch of queries related to just sort of the size of the Helium network and trying to give that like bird's eye view of what's going on. Where, oh my God, every time I look at it, I'm just like, I cannot believe there are this many hotspots, but here we are. Here is the mandatory hockey stick graph that, you got to have one of those. This one's actually real, which is really cool. Usually I fake it, but this one's real.
And that's the number of hotspots.
And this is the total number of hotspots. Yeah. You can see there's some like stats. Like we always try to put these little info boxes. I'll bump up my font size actually in case that helps.
Cool, because you're a little bit of like a blend of designer and geek. Like you understand that maybe font size might make a difference.
Screen sharing is rough. There's plenty of screen sharing. And then so this is a new chart that we put in here. There's a lot of colors going on, but it is the number of hotspots added per day by maker. So you kind of see the green is Bobcat, the blue is CalChip, which is rack, some of the rack devices I think still, and then you can see Nebra and you can see PantherX and Pisces and Rat. And one thing that's nice is you can actually zoom in to each of these reports and get kind of like the bigger picture of it. And
Bobcat is just crushing. They're doing what they said they were going to do.
So with these reports too, like we can even just zoom it out to 360. I rerun my query.
Now, when you're looking at this stuff, Jamie, are you looking for anything in particular, or is this more like it's just kind of cool to see this? Like when you see this, you're like, oh, we should pay attention to Bobcat for this reason, or we should really get on Panther for this other reason.
I personally am not necessarily acting on a lot of this information per se. Like it's funny. I'd say the most actionable thing that comes out of this particular chart for me is when people ask me which hotspot manufacturer they should buy. I say, I don't know. Actually, there's a lot now. and I don't know what everybody's wait times and even what the
Mhm.
relative qualities are, but I can send you this graph of like which ones essentially are selling and being onboarded actively. But
Oh, interesting. So you would use that as a proxy for like, hey, you can trust that in this case, Bobcat will probably be delivering because it has been delivering.
yeah,
for
and I mean, that's
X
not
number of
really
months.
telling a story about the lead times or anything like that, but it is, telling you something. So
Right.
it's, one of the things I do there. And then generally sort of like a lot of my interest is just in watching the health of the network overall and changes in the network. And for instance, like what is this huge, spike 𝗵𝗺𝗀 shipped out 3,000 hotspots onboarded in one day? It's kind of like, that's the kind of stuff where you look at it and you go, what's going on here? Is that just like some big initial shipment? Is that,
Do you remember
I don't
what
recall.
happened? I don't
offhand,
remember.
actually. I assume that was just sort of like a a big batch, but that's a big. This is actually hotspots onboarded to the blockchain per day. So on this day, 3,000 of them were activated. Yeah. So I assume maybe that was like one large order or something that they. I don't know.
Yeah, interesting. Because I know there's fleet, and this gets a little bit off topic. I was talking to a buddy of mine last night who's gotten into some affiliate program, and I guess that program has been buying enormous amounts of hotspots and then reselling them for some split. But maybe it's something like that where they're doing that and they're onboarding 3,000 at once and then sending them off. I mean, I would look at that and be like, man, something. It's what my roofer said to me one time. We were talking about crypto.
Yeah,
like,
there's something actually, and then we can even. So what's cool is, you can just crack this open, and there's a SQL query right here. So I'm gonna do vname equals, what was it again? It was 𝗵𝗺𝗀. Let's see if this works correctly. Whoops, what kind of quotes? So this is just the 𝗵𝗺𝗀.
So good.
And then.
Yep. So anyone can get in and do, like, anyone who has access can get in and do
Absolutely.
what you just did
press,
if they know what they're doing?
Just sign up and you can dive in. You can, once you're logged in, you can open any query. You can open the editor. You can fork it. You have to have like an escalated permissions in order to be able to edit these public dashboards that we've made, but you can always save it into your own private repository and keep it for yourself. Yeah,
and then break it as much as you want.
So with this one, I'm kind of interested to your point about like, I wonder if this was actually just one person or if this was like a bunch. Like what we can actually do is look at the number of accounts that did it.
An account would be like a wallet?
Yeah,
or something else.
Okay. This might be beyond my ability to do in real time, but I think we have account available here. This transactions exploded. So there's a bunch of things you can kind of do.
So as you're sorting that out, I'll give you some time because I think this is one of the things that was made most clear to me by interacting with Helium in general is that, man, there is a ton of instructions and code behind almost everything we see. And if you get just one thing wrong, it doesn't work. But if you get everything right, there's no, it can't not work. It's like a really wild system. And we all take most of this for granted, but it's cool seeing you do something and like, oh yeah, that worked and that didn't work. And there's like,
oh my God, programming. It's just like, just keep mashing the keyboard until something special happens.
Yeah, that has been my approach.
Yeah, it's I mean, I've been teaching my kids how to program too, and it's kind of like, here's how you do it. You keep one tab open on Stack Overflow and one tab open with your code, and then I
think did Stack Overflow do some study where that was like, what's the most common action performed on it, and it was copy paste?
100% correct. Yes. Let me see what's going on.
Which is that's certainly how I do my coding. Just like, who's figured this out before me?
What day was that? That was October 30th. I'll try this. October 30th. My graph isn't showing it to me correctly, but in this table you can kind of see. So it's a bunch of different accounts. It isn't just like one account that did all of them. You can kind of see here that there was a bunch of different owners, that there's 80, 70. So it must have just been like a big hotspot day. It could also have been one large operation that just spread it out across a bunch of different wallets.
Yeah, I'd be curious if someone goes into that and looks at the wallet addresses and sees how they broke that up. Because I just came back from doing some work with a guy who's planning on deploying 30,000 hotspots, and didn't realize that you couldn't have 30,000 hotspots in one wallet, or that you probably
Right.
wouldn't want to have 30,000
Yeah, and then
hotspots
it's
in
interesting
one wallet.
because I mean we've done a good amount of this. Like it's a blockchain and everything is public, so I mean we would be able to go in and just
Yep.
grab one of these wallets. Let's see.
Yeah.
Let's this person with these Panther X's. So I'll show you another dashboard. So we have a couple of other really cool ones. Oracle's is a personal favorite. There's the Oracle price, which is like so nerdy and silly, but I love this dashboard.
Yeah, talk to me about it. Walk me through.
Oh yeah, the Oracle price. It's really sort of like a tracker of the H&T price, but it's used internally for determining how many data credits you get when you burn an H&T. So it's used as part of the mint burn equilibrium.
Got it.
And it's determined by an interesting process where there are I don't know how many even. There's a specific number of validators, and they basically have to of oracles. They have to submit prices on a regular basis, and then the price is computed based on like an average of the prices they submit. I have this cool scatter plot that I'll show down and show. So this is like each of the oracles is a different color, and you can see sort of the price that they're all submitting at different points in time over this.
And who runs an oracle?
They're all anonymous. They were picked like some of them been identified by Helium Inc. as far as I know. At DY, there's a couple people that we've sort of asked to submit to this, but basically it's just like a wallet address that submits these transactions, and then those wallet addresses have been added as chain variables to be officially determine the H&T price. And recently you may have seen me spamming in the Discord about shilling my wares for trying to recruit more oracles, because there was this period right here. You can see there's a very low number of oracle submissions happening per day, and that causes what date is this? This is like November 14th. You can see these crazy flat spots in the oracle price graph, and it's caused by not enough oracle submissions happening within a given period. So I come here to bring great shame to the oracles during this period. They failed us, and there's been 3% of the days this month without oracle votes, which is 3% higher than it should be. So shame to you.
So why would you run an oracle?
Yeah, you don't get paid. We should pay them, though. I think that would be maybe
if it's an important service.
I'm always a big fan. I mean, maybe we'll put some DY funds against it. Now that you mention it, it's not a bad idea. Like, it doesn't need to be baked into the blockchain. We could just kind of like throw them some H&T to their wallet, right? Like,
it seems pretty important, though. If the blockchain gets big, that would be something I'd think that you'd use, I don't know, HST or something for it. It'd be some part of the breakdown between POC and investors and
there's
consensus
an interesting
group and all the rest.
proposal, a HIP proposal, which this is a great opportunity for me to flog my other wares around using the validators as oracles, which here it is, HIP 38 validator oracles. This is kind of a fun one, and the idea is that the validators, which are already these like beefy computers that are earning rewards for the work that they're doing, you could kind of just like sneak in a little bit more work for them to do, which could include like the price of H&T for the purposes of this oracle price, this mint burn price. But it could also include some other stuff. And one of the ideas that I've heard kicked around is actually having them do things like fetch, for instance, like population data for specific hex regions. And if we were to bring that data on chain, you could do things like you could kind of revisit HIP 15, HIP 17, the sort of like the hex density calculations. Like there was always some discussion about like it seems strange that the hex density is sort of like ignores the actual population of a given hex, so to speak. But the question then becomes, well, how do we know the population? And one idea would be to use this sort of decentralized system where it would be possible to submit junk data, but you would see the variance between the different oracles that were submitting data. And so you could kind of say, oh, hey, like this one oracle is constantly saying that New York only has 12 people living in it, and that, basically trying to juice the stats potentially, or who knows what they're trying to do. Maybe it's just a bug. But at that point you could say, you vary too far from the mean, we ban you. But yeah, TBD. It's kind of an early, idea. It needs a little bit of fleshing out.
I like it, and it's Chris that helped put it together, right?
It's got to be third or fourth HIP at least. It's very prolific.
Guy's a machine, yeah. So let's talk about HIPs a little bit. I think one of the big examples is that, hey, a lot of people don't know how HIPs work. So a HIP works, it's someone in the community, or it could be from Helium, and they write this HIP, this Helium Improvement Proposal. And then there's some kind of magic to it. You put it on this, I don't know.
It's all
is it
on
on
GitHub
where you submit it or you put in? Yep. And I mean, this is mind blowing to me. HIP 15 and 17, which governs pretty much how everyone gets rewarded, was written for free by a guy who is now, as far as I know, a rocket scientist. And we think about, here's this blockchain that's generating, they don't like to talk about it, but a lot of money for a lot of people. And the way it's run and the way that money gets distributed is written by a dude, more or less by one guy who is a fucking wizard. And I'm sure he had plenty of help and folks jumped in. But I remember when he was, Para1 was ultra active. And it's like, how is this dude have the balls to be like, oh yeah, I can write this thing for an entire system?
It's remarkable.
It's
yeah,
pretty
he did
awesome.
An excellent job. Like it's really very thoughtful, and the math was very sound. And I mean, I think it really speaks to the success you can find when you do create kind of like a community ecosystem where people are not only allowed to, but encouraged to participate. And like it's getting much faster, much better, much faster than it would if it were just,
oh yeah,
the very brilliant people at Helium Inc. Working on their own. But with this way, and some of it, what I like about a lot of it too, is that it's also an interesting way of helping to vet, the not so good ideas, and to sort of like really put everything out in the open. And in theory, to your point about like people being able to come into the community, this is a place where you can go and you can see in a lot of ways like the history of Helium as a protocol. Because I mean, even this first HIP, which is kind of like the first 5 or so were like very rough, but this is like adding LoRaWAN, originally it was like Long 5. It was kind of like a fork of LoRaWAN. But I love the idea that it was like, oh, here was this HIP that somebody wrote that was like, what if we just use regular LoRaWAN instead? And in the same way, like, I think this is the first HIP that I wrote, which was, it's a meta HIP. It is the HIP for managing HIPs.
Okay.
And and I tried to, it's funny because like we had like a rough template sort of, but the idea was like, okay, let's emulate a lot of really successful crypto projects in terms of their governance and make people, write down their ideas and write it down in sort of a structured way that is replicable across different proposals. So it's sort of like you can more easily understand sort of the core ideas and the core impact of different things. And since then, I mean, like HIP 19 was another big one that I helped write around sort of just bringing the manufacturers on. 20 with the max supply changes was huge. 39 now with like the redenomination. But then even like there's some small ones like this one around like block height chain var activation. This is right. It's pretty.
What would that do?
Yeah, it's just
activate.
Put a block
Let's
number.
see what happens.
But yeah, it's right now actually like so chain vars which are the there's a lot of variables that can be tuned within the blockchain. Like for instance, like the we were talking about the hex density math, which I think all serious hotspot owners are deeply familiar with, and that that is just like a list of variables on the chain. And fortunately, we have this awesome DY ETL that lets us just, I think I call it chain vars maybe. There we go.
So there's a little bit where you have to know what you're
you do need to understand the system. Okay. We try to make these public dashboards that sort of will give you the the like macro level view of it. But with this, like this is every transaction that has modified some of the chain variables. And so you're able to go in and actually see.
Got it. So when you see staking keys
I think this is related to the oracles. I forget what this is exactly.
Okay. That's not like someone.
You know what? Actually, that is it. That is. These are new makers being onboarded, I think. And then kind of like tweaking. Like I think, what was it? You can kind of see. Here's a POC challenge interval being modified. This was bumped either up or down to 300 blocks, and then looks like later that day they bumped it to 360.
Because
something must have happened.
Something must have happened.
And then here's even like POC version 10. Like this is where the team attempted to upgrade to POC v11. You can see 11 here, and then
yeah.
you can see, what is it? 2 hours later, we are rolling it back.
Yeah, no, that's been exciting. It's supposed to come out in a couple days from
and then I think
the
it's
date of
called
this recording.
chain inventory, or what is it called? VAR's inventory. There's all these things. There's a lot of random names because it sort of like dates back to the original pieces of it. But you can kind of even use in 𝑑𝑦_ETL. This is just a list of every chain variable inside of the system.
Wow. Okay, so you could look through and check all this stuff out. Very cool. So you could see the
I forget
whatever
what those
chain
are.
bars.
It's not region. What were those called? This is in no particular order, so I'm just scrubbing. Here we go. HIP17, Res8, Res7, Res6. And this looks like an encoded field, but we could probably figure out how to turn it back into a number of some kind.
Yep. So if you turn on Res8, you're going to see 2, 1, and 4, whatever it is. Now on the bottom left, there's the visualization piece. You can do that for anything, or is that only for
there's nothing I can really visualize here because this is just like a big list of things. But but we could kind of do.
Yep.
I don't know. I always like to do like rewards by day. It's sort of an easy one. Yeah.
I was going to ask for that. People always ask. They're always asking, "Hey, is my hotspot good enough?
Absolutely.
Is it better or worse than the average?" And so I've been using this to be like, "Oh, the average hotspot earns like 0.18 HN a day the last time I looked." So if you're above
and there
that,
is actually a report that somebody did somewhere which breaks down the average. I think it was 𝗵𝗁, who is like data wizard. He's responsible for a lot of the really actually good dashboards here. I'd say I helped out with all the bad ones. Oh yeah, here's average rewards per day overall. And then there is a chart somewhere, I think it's called Makers, where it
it's average rewards per day per maker?
Overall rewards, but tried to break it out by here we go. It's average rewards per day by maker. Yeah, this is kind of a funky visualization. Let's go in and edit this one so we can kind of make more sense of this. Enhance,
Enhance. Oh, super cool. So you can see that the long AP or whatever, that hotspots from Bobcat or from Panther average this amount, and hotspots from Rack or Freedom Fire
exactly.
average
this is doing it over the last 7 days.
Holy smokes!
So
what's the best?
Okay,
what's
so
the best miner? It's
you
right
have
there
to
in
take it
front
with a
of
grain of salt because because some companies
this is
sell outdoor
true.
miners, right? So it's sort of like you should expect that an outdoor miner will
excuse it
perform average better. But I'm just gonna drop the.
Can you control for that and just put, hey, these are the indoor miners?
Yeah, we can
these
kind of look at it by.
I mean, people are scrambling. What's that 0.47 at the top? That's what I'm buying right now.
You know what? I don't need that. I'm just getting rid of the date so you can just see the summary stats because like doing it by day is a little excessive just because rewards vary so much. So it's a little. I think it's a little more accurate just to look at it like in aggregate for a period like this.
Yeah, tons of variables.
Yeah, some of these get pretty fancy. Like, and anybody who's interested in doing SQL, there's some very simple queries you can find that are way more straightforward than some of these. This is getting into like we've got like variables inside of here that we can control with this little interface here. We've got exclusions for whatever these two makers are, test makers, and then my query here is taking forever, which means I did something wrong. That's what I absolutely broke something.
You broke something. Yeah, okay.
Position 4, let's try.
Huh? And can you revert, or
No,
all right, this is going to be broken.
Like, I haven't even saved this or anything, so I could just go back to the original query, and it's right here.
Okay.
Yeah. You think I'd be better at this after
Very
the amount of time that I've spent doing it, but.
All these things are like super sub-specialized skills. And so there's, one thing I came into is that all computer geeks have the same amount of knowledge, which is way more than I do. But within that band of more knowledge there's incredible variance, right? And within any specific domain, you could be an HTML wizard and be lost in Erlang or whatever the magical words are. So, yeah, no surprise at all that this is like, oh yeah, there's like one thing wrong that's not even on the screen. Too. Yeah, of course it's not going to show.
I swear that I've already done this one.
Cool. So you'll find it.
It's just the same one. But yeah, you can kind of see like the big graphs of some long APs seem to be doing really well. Looks like this was a good day for Controlino.
Yep.
𝗵𝗏𝘅 appears to be a big,
Well done,
big
guys.
red winner.
Yeah. I just got a 𝗵𝗏𝘅 yesterday. I just had the coolest convo with Rawlinson and 𝗚𝗏𝘁 off of Discord that's getting posted in the next
very
day or two
cool.
about 5G.
I'm so stoked about 5G.
Rad.
It's going to be... I mean, actually, I would say to your question earlier about like how I got involved in helium, the thing was, I was like, this is very cool. IoT sensor networks are very cool. And there was someone that I spoke to. I don't know if it was Tushar or someone else from DY, but I was like, could this work for other protocols? For instance, phone networks? And they were like, why do you think we invested? And that was a beautiful moment where I was like, this is like a generic enough protocol that it should be able to work for anything. Like we should be able to do this for. Yeah, I was like, I made a good call. Love hearing that. Yeah,
every so often. Yeah. So, I mean, there's what's the other one I just saw, and I bought one out of curiosity. 𝗪𝗏𝘁. I think they're doing the same thing, although I got to dig into it and look at it. But it's just like, oh, this is how wireless networks are going to be built in the future. And helium is probably the first and the biggest and the fastest and the best, but they're probably not going to be the only ones.
So I'm just bringing up some of my other favorite dashboards. We have this account details one that I really like. And then there's like a hotspot details one. Mm-hmm. And over time, we've started adding like more and more queries to kind of pull different performance data out of it. So here's just like a random hotspot that I found.
Yep.
This one appears to be earning something, so I'll use that one. And then most of these have to use the raw address, but late orange sea lion here has been doing pretty well. Here's kind of the daily rewards. It's trending up and to the right. Great job. And then looks like they haven't successfully transmitted any beacons, but you can see actually their reward stats too, like the actual number of witness events that they do per day, the amount of data credits they're actually transferring, which should go up. And then I recently added these maps and things like that, which I really love. And then you can kind of see this reward breakdown of the neighbors. This one's cache. This is so good for anybody doing like planning purposes. Hotspotty's awesome. There's a lot of really awesome tools for doing this. But for me, since I'm just kind of comfortable with SQL and very comfortable with ETL, like this is the place to do it. And you can kind of see that they've got a nearby neighbor here that's doing very well.
Okay, so walk me through what you're looking at, what you're seeing.
Sure, yeah. I always found it really difficult to just look at an area and compile the stats. Like, is this good place for hotspot? ? And what I wanted was a query that pulled all the hotspots within, I don't know, let's say 2 miles or 5 miles or whatever radius you'd like, and then pulled how well are they doing, which I can use as a proxy for like, are they on the roof? Like, will I be able to reach them? And then even looking at things like, are they online even? Like, and then what is the reward scale for the region? And you can actually just use this query, which is on this dashboard, but it is also itself kind of like an individual query. And you can take it, basically pulls the lat long for any given hotspot. There's another version of this. Where you can just put in the lat long, so you can just kind of pick a spot on the map, like if you've ever actually, I feel like this is a great pro tip. Like, this took me forever to learn that you can just kind of like zoom into a map anywhere on Google Maps and just click and hold. It doesn't always work. I click and hold. There we go. And it drops a little point. And then down here at the very bottom, you can click the lat long.
Yeah, I'm always on Google Earth for that. So now,
my God, I was like, a friend of mine works on Google Maps and was like, why are you doing this crazy stuff? He's like, you can just long press to get the lat long, right? And I was like,
it's so funny. These geeks are like, you can just do this one thing. It's like, it's easy when you know how. When you don't know how, it's impossible.
So I've got this other one that's nearby hotspots. Forget which one. I have too many of these. You'll have to forgive me. That one's with address. Take my word for it. One of these, is just strictly, you could punch in a lat long instead of punching an existing address. But we could do that with something else too. Like, we've got, we're over here in, where are we? Oh yeah, okay, we're in California.
LA.
Oh my God, what part of the world is this? So we could,
best part of the world.
Out, fantastic brown otter here. And just kind of look at like, is this a good place to hotspots? And so I'm doing within 5,000 meters, and it's sorting by distance. So you can see, there's a couple. And in my early versions of these queries, actually, I would look at it and I'd be like, wow, this is great. There's like 3 people within, 1,000 meters, or four or 5 people within 1,000 meters. 3 of them are offline though. And so there's another link here that actually takes you directly to the details page for each of these too. So you can kind of crack these open and actually look at. These ones are like hard offline. They haven't done anything in 30 days. But we'll look at.
Very cool. So you'd look at this dashboard. Let's just walk through kind of how you'd see it if this was one you're looking at. And you say, okay, fantastic brown otter, 24 HNT.
Yeah, this was last 30 days, and then we can bump it up. I'll do like 90 days. Sometimes it's fun.
Yep. So it's been online for 3 months. It's been cranking away. It was offline for a little bit during the Great
Depression
of Helium.
Black Friday.
The 4 days where it was down.
You can see this one's like a pretty reliable little hotspot. It's sort of like low witnessing beacon levels, like 5 a day. This is a big day, 15. But and then it's kind of a low reward scale for the area too, considering sort of the low traffic. So this is one where I'd be like, yo, you need to get your antenna on the roof. But it's just plugging along. This will add up. And then you can see the general area, and then I always love looking at the ones that are actually high earning and sort of seeing like what's the how do I go to there, or help people go to there. And this is great. You can see sort of this has been pretty steady. Looks like a quarter of an HNT a day, which is no joke. And that other one was doing like 5-6 witnesses per day, but this one's doing 90 on a good day.
But it's
it looks like it. It's always it's always so difficult. Radio is very messy. And then you can.
It's a wild thing, and the network's crazy, right? I just see that I've got one on top of a mountain, and sometimes it's banging, and sometimes the cell backhaul goes down, and so it stops, or the solar panel spins around to the north. And
or it's like, I mean, gosh, even the weather, like it's remarkable how much the weather will affect it too. And so recently I put together this dashboard, which was sort of the same idea as the individual hotspot details, but across the entire account. So this is one of those that I had pulled. This one's new, so it's maybe not as interesting. Let's use Otter. How many do they have? Way more. That's much more interesting. And you can actually put in multiple accounts too. So if you're someone with you're a major operator with thousands of hotspots, you can actually just chain them together, paste them together, which is a new metabase feature that I found out about that I love.
So you put in the wallet address and then comma space.
It kind of does it for you,
or is it some other way?
You can kind of just paste again. I only have the same value, but I'll find another hotspot really fast. 14 𝗚𝗵𝘁. So I'll paste again. Update filter. One dumb quirk of Metabase is you can't edit both of these fields at the same time. You have to press update filter, and then I could bump this out to 90 days, but I have to do it as a separate click.
The computer only does what you ask it to do.
So across these 2 accounts, I'll delete the second one. So we're looking at 62 hotspots. Nice job. They've made 490 HNT in the last 90 days. I'll change this back to 30 just because it's easier for my brain to do. 120 HNT. No joke. Yeah. Great job. 13.
Not for 62 hotspots, though.
119 divided by 62, 1.9. 2 HNT, $100 per hotspot per month. I don't know. I mean, it's pretty good considering you use the same amount of power as a light bulb.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to my buddies who we live through the days of 800 HNT a month hotspot. So I see this now and I'm nah.
Blessing and a curse.
I got spoiled. I'm sorry.
So with this one,
totally.
So I have it pulling across the account. So a lot of the things are similar, like the sort of the beacon's witness. This is the aggregate beacon's witness across all of them. That doesn't really tell me a lot because it is so variable across all of them. But it's, I don't know, it's kind of a fun stat to look at especially when,
it's super cool because you can see what day something broke.
Too. When you look at it over the course of 6 months like this, you can kind of start to see is there a trend here or anything like that? You can see the reward trend, obviously, but even with the actual activity. And then this isn't pulling the data credits, but that's on the other dashboard, and I love seeing how much data is a hotspot actually transferring. And then this one's my other favorite piece of it,
Yeah.
which is like, okay, so I've got a map of where they are. So we've got Ladybug over here in New Yorkish.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like they got a bunch in Chicago. They got a couple in 𝗪்រិsh. And then, so I broke it out by geo. So their earnings per city,
Mm-hmm.
Littleton, Colorado is their big city. And then the average rewards per hotspot in that area. And then like, looks like they have 45 in Colorado, 8 in Illinois, 7 in Wisconsin, 2 in New York. But I love looking at this kind of like idea of like per city averages and things like that. And there's some work in progress dashboards inside of the ETL for trying to do like geo breakdowns that 𝗪𝗁 has been working on. They look pretty good. And then this one down here, this last one that I started, I put together, this is partially actually to help me debug which of mine were offline and which of mine were relayed. Like I basically just look at this whenever I'm babysitting my hotspots, and these are not my hotspots. To be clear,
these aren't your hotspots.
Feel free to send them to me. Or send me, just DM me your seed words. No big deal. Don't do that. Just be clear. Don't do that.
I'll just fix something for you real quick.
Even if they're cool.
Yeah.
Seed words.
Seed words are yours.
But yeah, you can. I love kind of like perusing through some of these reports, and it's like a handy way. You can even just zoom in on just this one report. You can put in the owners. You could put like a time, because it does the same sort of thing where it actually pulls the rewards as well. Like this is all time. So you can see, I think I have it sorting by rewards. So one of their hotspots has pulled down 7,000 _T since it started. So that's a nice job, Sparrow. And then we can zoom in. Let's see how Sparrow's doing the last 6 months. Sparrow, look at that. One curve I'm interested, by the way. If any of your viewers could help me come up with what I think of as inflation adjusted earnings, I am dying to know, like we know how many hotspots are added each day, and we know how that sort of will dilute everyone's earnings collectively. And I would love to be able to look at something which was like a normalized number of, is a given hotspot still earning like on an inflation adjusted basis, so to speak, the same amount that it was like back in July or last year. And that's kind of why I look at these beacons witnessed graphs and sort of like the beacons transmitted, because if those are relatively steady, then I could say, okay, like this hotspot is still sort of generally performing correctly. But it's hard to say, because when you look at just the earnings, it's impossible to know, like, is this, I don't know, it could just be a fluke, could just be inflation from network growth.
Yeah, you have good and bad days for sure. I mean, we can see August the Halvening that.
Yeah, exactly.
That had an effect.
Yeah, right. And you kind of need to factor that in too. I feel like I need to have like a graph where it's just sort of like, it says like, everything before here, don't count it the same way. But this one's doing great. Right. Interesting. The reward scales kind of went up for a little bit, and then came back down. The transmit scale.
Yeah, same thing happened in San Diego. Like our nearby Res 4 filled in. We all went from like 0.6 to 0.9, and so there's like this brief bump in earnings, and then it got filled in again.
I think those are most of my favorite dashboards. For folks who are interested in validators, this validators dashboard is also like a really fun report for sort of studying, in particular, sort of like what is a validator supposed to be earning, sort of. And in that same way that there was like that Oracle scatter plot, this is like the most intense graph I've ever made. But you can see sort of like the number of,
talk me through it. Yeah.
Like a validator earns rewards for participating in consensus. So, and then it receives penalties for doing a bad job in that process or for lagging behind the rest of the group.
Yep.
So what you really want is to maximize the number of times you've been in consensus with a minimum number of penalties. So you can see like, Wild Sangria Nightingale up here has been in consensus 174 times, but has like a relatively low amount of penalties currently. And then there's this poor puppy over here that has been in consensus a bunch, but has managed to accrue 87 points worth of penalties, which is kind of a lot. It's not great, but things happen. No. This one might have been in the consensus group during the downtime outage, and everybody got penalized so heavily.
Sure.
Because it was like, wow, a block is supposed to take a minute, and it took like 14 hours. You're a bad validator.
Yep. Interesting. So can you use or do you use this to look for for gamers or for
yeah, a
kind
little
of
bit.
problems?
Like I haven't been actively doing it personally recently. We are very interested at DUI in funding people who are interested in doing investigations like this. And there is, and the really easy version of it, to your point, is sort of just like basic anomaly detection and just looking for outliers, and then like, oh hey, we found like a validator that, this is hypothetical, but like if you were to see, for instance, like a validator that was in consensus for like abnormally long, you're
for
like
7 days straight.
Exactly.
Like,
It might be a bug in the code. It might be like, there's a lot of potential reasons for only cheating.
It's only
right?
cheating.
Just racks and racks of validators. Yeah. Now the validator system is pretty resilient to it, but the hotspots, I mean, anytime you bridge the real world and the digital world, you're inviting trouble. So with the hotspots, that is actually like a metric that we've looked at over time. I think that there is actually a whole hotspot section here that has tons of reports. Excuse me. Some which
I was
going to say, I did a bunch of digging into this. Like when basically, I don't want to reveal too much of my magic secrets, but when, like, I think you've been around long enough to remember, like, you didn't used to be able to transfer hotspots between accounts. So one of the things, like when we rolled out that feature that I set up using DYETL, using some SQL queries, was let's see who starts transferring hotspots. And so there's this most moved is like asserting locations, which is like, why would you need to do this 65 times? That seems sketch. And like the next highest one is 29. Tarantula. What are you doing, Tarantula?
Keep an eye out for that guy. It's an interesting piece.
And then what's kind of fun is, so I've got Tarantula here. I'll crack open my hotspot details and see. Let's see what.
And I guess you can look at that owner. Like, does that owner constantly move their
that.
hotspots?
Let's find out. Copy and paste.
Now the Tarantula
sorry.
Like, dude,
they're like,
no, I
don't
want
sketchy,
this to be public. Stop this. 60 times is a lot. That's $600 in moving
They only have
fees.
7 hotspots, but the thing is that it might have been a transfer in as well. Like maybe the reason it's been asserted so much is that the hotspot's actually been sold a bunch or something like that. But
65 times. I mean, that'd be really interesting to know, is like how much is a hotspot kind of made in terms of sales? Like, did it get sold from Helium and then on eBay and then on eBay again, then through Craigslist? I mean, there's no way to track that. But it's like, some hotspot might have.
Yeah, it'd be pretty easy for us to make like a chart of moves. Where are these people? This is Chicago. So in Chicago, and like it's interesting here that you can see that like clearly it's been moved around a bit just because of these like flat spots in the rewards. But and then even like the changes in the reward scale, like this was probably a location move. And if I had to guess, this person's probably doing a bit of hex gaming and trying to just a smidge.
A bit. Let's go to, so one thing that people will see, they're like, oh, look at that at the top left of the graph we were just looking at. There was a window that had a spike of 40 HNT in a day. And just so you don't think that's gaming, is that this
is pre-validators, so I'm sure
January?
This is someone who won the consensus lottery.
Consensus group.
Yeah.
Yep. So you used to be able, like, this used to happen, which was a super cool thing. You'd wake up and your hotspot had made like 40 or 100 overnight.
Yeah, it was awesome.
That's pretty cool.
It was awesome.
And then that got offloaded. That got offloaded, validated. Okay, so that's not like a cheating thing, but this is a thing where you're like, man, you're moving an awful lot. If you own Tarantula, I would love to talk to you.
And then let's just do a quick filter.
Call me. We'll keep it private.
Between you, me, and everybody watching.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because you got to really be careful with your public shared information. Is that in this instance, this is all public. You could look at Tarantula, look at the first address it's asserted at, and it would be reasonable, not definite, but it'd be reasonable. If that's the person's house, right? Because people get their first hotspot and they're like,
and it's kind of like, and then even like, I would advise people to not be posting hotspot names or addresses in Discord or otherwise, try to keep like your hotspot life distinct from your. I agree with you, and I think that probably every single account, the first hotspot, I just assume is the owner's house, basically. I also recommend to people to assert you know, not directly on your home. You know, and not in like a gaming way, but just like for like a basic privacy protection way. And I'm glad that the account map now kind of obfuscates it by only letting people zoom in. But you should know that under the hood, it still has like a specific lat long, and I can go to your house. So
yeah, you can see that on Hotspotty for free.
Totally.
You can see it on Helium.Vision for, I think their lowest paid plan is $5 a month. Like that information is out there. Just as like a, PAs.
account,
I think
look
that
at this.
and
This
this is
person
just
was
me, this
moving
is not
it
Helium.
every
I think,
block. Like they moved it twice in one block. I don't know why.
So something's weird, huh?
And then all I have is this ugly location value, but this is a lot of location moves.
So it'd be interesting to put this on a map and basically have a line connecting every new location dot on the map and seeing like what were they doing? Are they drawing a word? Does this sound like crying for help?
Nah, it might be beyond the scope of what we can do right here. But I can basically reuse the logic that we used here where we join the locations table with like a list of hotspots. And I could basically just like fetch. Actually, I think I can just convert this to SQL and do it really fast. It's like a speed run. So we'll
no pressure.
Select join. I'll just copy the code from here. And
So
right.
Cool.
This is L.long. This crazy little thing. So many red X's. My life is just filled with red X's. All right, we got lat long. So let's do a map. And then I have to set, was it pin map? I forget. Yeah, that looks right. My latitude field is lat, and my longitude field is long, and my latitude field is lat. And oh, my bad. I did not. This is every hotspot.
It's like,
where was our tarantula? Is this tarantula?
This fucking guy. I gotta figure out if I can swear on YouTube. I normally have the foulest mouth, and I'm just like, man, I should
appreciate
keep this
that.
a little more publicly acceptable.
What was I doing? Hash. I want owner. The SQL that they generate out of Metabase is so noisy, like all these extra quotes and stuff. It's like it offends my aesthetics. There we go. Where? That's right.
This affects you.
I'm
very terribly vexed.
Okay, I think this is. We're getting closer. That's the owner. I don't think that's the right hotspot. Oh, it's tarantula. Okay, all right. We're getting closer. So I've got my lat. I've got my lat long. It looks like a bunch of them are actually not filled out, the lat long, so it won't show up correctly, which I think is just a bug. This is so strange. Like a lot of these are, it's just moving between the same hex. Like look, like this is 947FF and then 90DFF and then back to 947, 947. Like the
March 14th.
Yeah, on the same day they moved it from here to here 3 hours later, and then the next morning they moved it back, basically.
They're gonna call me and be like, "Dude, this is why I did it, you knuckleheads!" Like,
I would love to know.
I broke
what
my
the heck this
hotspot.
person was doing, because I mean, you can't move a hotspot twice in one day and expect anything to happen, actually. But
yeah. So, is there a way on this to see what is the minimum number of days you need for a decent?
That's a good question. I mean, I feel like you can actually just eyeball it using these graphs, because like all you have to do is just look at like the variance between earnings on any given day. You know, and you can see that it's like almost nothing changed in terms of the actual witness activity here, but it's plus or minus 50% on a given day. So I always tell people like a minimum of a week to be able to try to like see some sort of a trend line. And
Right.
honestly, and even that now, because of how fast the network is growing, is no longer good advice, because after a week we've added another 10,000 hotspots, and so it's that much less.
Interesting. So is there a way that you think of when you're testing a spot? I mean, I've done some stuff on how you test an antenna or location, but I think the answer to this is it doesn't exist. There is not a good way to test your hotspot and isolate the variables.
I think that is correct, because really, unless you control all or most hotspots in a given area, the people your hotspots you're talking with might be relayed, they might fall offline, like it's, and you can figure a lot of that out. And I have, on like an individual hotspot basis, kind of like found one where the earnings seem to tank, and it's here we go. My guy's just sleeping over there off camera.
Marvel. Hey.
I love it.
Fucker. I may have to.
Please, no problem at all.
Here, hang on, let me grab this little devil. Hey, dude.
I know he's like, I want to be on YouTube too.
I always want a piece of the action. All right, let me see if I can plug back in.
Yeah.
Talk to my friend Jamie here, and maybe you don't bark at everyone who comes by. I always want to cut that stuff out.
Oh my god, we're all humans.
Everybody's got dogs.
I'm a fan.
Yeah. It's this rotten little bugger. Every one of these interviews, he finds something that about 40 minutes in to be like, "Oh my god, Dad, something's going on."
Yeah, I'd say that's the rough tour of a lot of the stuff that's in the DYETL today. This
is one I wanted to see is what's data credit usage look like over time, because this is like the exciting thing that is the reason the network exists.
Kind of come in here. So you saw me editing SQL, but Metabase actually has a lot of like graphical kind of query building tools, and so I can come in here and I have to wait for this to load, but we'll pull this out to 180 days. Yeah, we're doing science.
It's doing science, dude.
It's funny because
science takes time.
So that's a bug. And then, actually, were you early enough to Helium to know? Do you remember 𝗪𝗁 Meerkat? The Meerkat. So all these queries have this owner is not this address because of the Meerkat.
Because. Yeah. So this was a hotspot that they were gaming the system, doing a fantastic job of gaming, and they made, I forget what it was at the peak. It was like 70,000 HMT a day, like some ridiculous amount.
The analysis, because it was like an arbitrage hole where they were able to route data credits through their own hotspot and collect more than they had put in, but it was very small. The amount of actual profit was very low. But so they were trying to make up for that with volume, and so they were just pumping like, I think it was millions of data credits through this one hotspot. Yeah, this is like legit tests, but yeah, you can see the trend in data usage. So this is converted into dollars. I don't know what happened on these 2 days. Yeah, it's a good question.
What happened there? And can you dig into that and figure out like what sensors or what gateways process that data? You can look at which gateways it came through
based on the rewards for it, but you can't identify individual sensors. It's only just sort of like the blockchain basically just says like this many packets were routed through this gateway and here's your reward basically. But you can't. Yeah, because I'm always really curious about like what is the trend in sensors on the network too, like what kind of sensors are coming online, and there's like, I'm sure there's technical reasons as well as sort of privacy reasons for it, but I would be very curious to know like what kinds of sensors are selling well, like what's growing in the network. But
yeah, and we can't see kind of sensors onboarded to the network.
Not really, and I think it'll be like a never question unless there's some fundamental changes to how the routing works. But in general, it's just sort of like packets, like verified packets that have come through. But yeah.
And that's it. Okay, so looking at this, like it's not growing as fast as I would like to see for kind of long-term value, but
yeah, let's see what Meerkat.
It's up from where it was.
Meerkat, I want to say it was in the summer, but I forget. I think it
summer
might be
of 2020, right?
Yeah, this is a very slow query. This is going very slow. That was such a fascinating little period. I keep threatening to write up the story of the meerkat because it was such a weird one.
Please. I mean, there were so many, just like, I don't know, not hacks, but it's like so many people figuring out how to cheat the system because it wasn't well developed yet. It was
and I think it was right around when data credits were first launched too. So it was sort of still early, basically. But, the data credits, I always love looking at just the trend overall is pretty small, and I'm not surprised by that at all. I mean, still, like if you think about what I always tell people is that most telecommunications networks, it takes 10 years before they transfer their first packet at all. It takes, $20 billion in 10 years. So the fact that Helium has any network transfer happening on it at all is pretty remarkable.
The project is
worldwide to the U.S.
for sure.
113 million data credits. This is pretty much all time.
Nice.
I might be wrong. But then I always love, like top earning hotspots. Like these are just not hotspots, but like areas. And China, Romania, Serbia, and Turkey. It's a global project too. It's pretty amazing. Oh, this is kind of a fun one. This is new. I think somebody must have added this. Unique hotspots transferring data per day. And I'm curious about this drop off. So
out of the 390,000 on the
dropping from over 90,000 down to only 32,000. There must have been some kind of operator that was maybe testing sensors or something like that stopped.
Or maybe just the network was down and wasn't working super well because that's
around.
About
this
that
is
time, right?
The day where it was down. I think like November 15th-ish. But this is a fairly big. I mean, the trend was definitely up and up and up, like 90,000 plus, and then now it's dropped by almost 60,000. So there must be something going on.
Yeah, I've talked to people who said that they were just the other day. I talked to this guy who was installing Helium hotspots for all of his clients. He'd been doing LoRa before he found Helium, and then he switched them over to Helium. But because the network wasn't robust enough for his clients yet, they're like, "Nope, get us back off." And he's like,
I think that's totally understandable too. I mean, the resilience, that's one of the things I think we need to kind of collectively be working on a lot is really just the robustness and resilience of the network. And I wouldn't be surprised if this graph at all, this was in fact look. I mean, it jumped from 38,000 to 55,000 right away. This could all just be one large operator that was just testing, I don't know, their worldwide fleet of whatever. And then, to your point, they were like, the downtime, just kidding. We roll it all off for now. So, that's unfortunately very understandable. So I think that it's kind of on us to keep figure it out. We got to fix the bugs.
Figure it out, fix it.
It's easy. Just find the bugs, you squash the bugs. Yeah. See the red X. Try again. Just try again.
Just keep going. Yeah. Just keep going. That's the deal. Dude, thanks a ton for your time. This has been awesome. It's cool. It's cool to go through it with you and see. I always just get stuck. And I'm like, dude, what did I do to not get what I wanted? But it's nice having you there. We're like, we'll
pull it over. And then
there's
a data analysis channel in the Discord that filled with friendly folks. If you ever have data questions or you're wondering what to do with something, like please pop in. And happy to do more things like this. I always love kind of doing these debug my hotspot adventures.
Let's do like an AMA or like a live thing. We'll get a couple people on. And we'll
I was wondering how to do the privacy piece of that because to your point, like I think most people will want to be debugging a hotspot that most likely is in their home. And I am always kind of on the fence about that where I'm like, I wonder how we could do something where like we bring you up, but mask your identity somehow, but I haven't figured it out yet.
I've got a form on the site that is not totally public yet. You can find the page if you look for it, but it's like they submit whatever they want, their name, their problem, etc. So we could just be like, hey, send in your hotspot name, send in your problem.
That's a great idea.
We'll pick 5 of them.
And then that way, like, because there's questions that I would have for the person, but we could just put them in the form where I just want to know, like, where's your hotspot in your house? What's the setup like? How's your visibility? Are you on a hill? Like, whatever. Yeah. So that's cool. That's a great idea. I'd be happy to help out with that. I have to come up with. I always. It needs a cool name. It's got to come with a cool name. It's like a segment of a show.
All right.
Let's do it.
I'll put my brain against it. Ripping. Well, thanks for your time, dude. Super appreciate it, and looking forward to more and just kind of sharing all the data
Let's do
magic.
It. Sounds great. I really appreciate you having me. It's a pleasure, Nick.
Right on.
Yep. Take care.
Thanks, Jay.